In this scenario, we're going to cover policies and procedures, document control, creation and maintenance. We have our customized landing page, which covers our metrics. We have our customized views and our workflow queue. Here we've got a simple view that shows us published procedures where we can drill down by policy type. When it comes to creating a new policy, we have our list of templates. In this case, we're going to create a blank draft. We choose our policy type. We define the scope and purpose of the policy document. We determine the department of users. This category field will be able to dictate who needs to have access and visibility to this document once it's been published. We also have our classification, our source of requirement, and we're also able to establish an automated periodic revision as well as an expiration date for the policy. Since we've filled out all of our mandatory fields, we're able to save the document. Once the document's been saved, we're able to automatically generate a file naming convention. We're able to generate an SOP number automatically, and we're able to give defined edit access to our user. In this case, he's able to draft his new policy document. Once the draft is done, he's able to send it for approval. We're able to leave a comment on our workflow action. And then we're able to submit it for our approvers. Once he's taken his action, Sam is then going to have suggestion rights instead of edit. In this case, our approver is going to get a customized notification, and he's going to have targeted access. He's also able to take his workflow action directly from the interface, in this case approving the document and leaving a comment, so we have full audit capabilities. Now that the document's been approved, we're going to be able to again dynamically adjust the permissions on the document, and in this case, we're able to notify the entire group that needs to have access to this document. Since we're maintaining the permissions, we do not need to publish this as a PDF. In this scenario, we're going to go into a Google site and visit our already established policy documents that have been published out to an intranet, in this case a Google site with an AODocs connector. Here we have a very easy to use interface that allows us to search based on the requirement. It also allows us to do text search. We want to create a very efficient way for our users to find the content, the right content. In this case, again, a Google document. View only for our user Sam. We're also enabling our user to be proactive to where we don't need to rely on our periodic revisions. In this case, we have a quarterly revision, but Sam may have caught something that needs to be added or adjusted inside the document. Here, a comment is mandatory, so we need to update the information related to Twitter. When he submits it, it's going to go out to our approver, the person that owns the document. Then they're going to be able to make the determination of whether or not they need to maintain the current version or start the update process. In this case, our user Tony is going to start the update process. In this case, it's important from a document control perspective that we make comments mandatory. We need to maintain the proper revisions, we need to maintain the proper history, and we need to check out the proper versions, making them available. Once we've taken this action, this document is now going to be in a draft state. We want to make this very clear for our users that this is a draft version. That means it's going to have different rules and visibility based on what we've established as an administrator. In this case, we're again tracking our comment and transition history, and our user is able to make any changes now that he is in the edit state for this specific version of the document. Now he's able to go in and make some adjustments, as well as fix some typos on the document. Once he's done, he can go ahead and take his workflow action. In this case, he's able to approve the new version himself. Once approved, we're going to check in this draft version as a new document, maintaining the full version and audit history. And now that it's been published, we're able to send out notifications, in this case, email, out to our full user group. This gives us the ability not only to push notifications out via email or by things like chatbots, which we showed earlier, but also create and publish this out to the site that we opened with in this scenario as well. Now that we've gone through the policy and procedure process, let's take a closer look at how we got there. Currently logged in is John. He's our library administrator. Because he's our administrator, he has access to this area. He's going to go ahead and click on the library administration, and that's going to bring him to the library admin console. Within this area, he gets the ability to do some general settings, adjust the library name, the URL, how long we're maintaining content after it's been deleted, the welcome message, in this case, the Google Data Studio view. Let's drill in closer to the functional document class. We focused on the policy and procedure. Our properties represent the metadata values that we looked at and collected throughout the process. In AODocs, it's a very point and click type environment from a configuration perspective, which allows us to push a lot of the ownership of our libraries to the business users, business analysts, without a lot of IT overhead, if any. In this case, we've got a mix of fully mandatory properties. We've got hidden properties, properties that are maintained by the system. And in this area, we get to name the property, determine whether or not it has multiple values, if it's read-only at all times, if it's mandatory, if it's hidden, and then what that field type is. We also have the ability to configure settings for each of our property types. So this allows us to put business logic on the field types. In other words, this person has to be a part of this group or this role in order to be entered as this field. We also get to configure the security. So in this case, it's very important that we configure the document's current workflow state to manage the permissions. That way, when a published document is available, we're only seeing the published version if we're a regular user. We don't have visibility to the content that's currently in a draft state or awaiting approval. And we get to leverage templates. So we got to see us take advantage of a blank policy template, but we did have 3 other templates available to us. We also took advantage of categories. Going through the process, we said, oh, okay, what was the department of users? So we're able to define static list content. So corporate, manufacturing, research testing, specific facility. We can go nested and create subcategories inside any of these fields. So we're able to nest categories inside. Views are also a very important aspect of this. So one of the main views that we looked at, both inside of AODocs and through the Google site, was published procedures. In here, we're able to configure how many documents per page in AODocs. What's the visibility? Everyone needs to have access to this. We are able to give security-based access to the views. What information is displayed in the view? In this case, we're only showing the published content. How are we sorting it? What filters are we giving to the users? And how are we targeting the content to include it in this view? Roles can be configured to be static. So these set users are administrators. These set users are contributors, or these groups are contributors. Same goes for readers. In the case of our approvers, we're able to create a dynamic role. What does that mean? It means that we get to have our static approvers, but we're also able to take a field level value. So in this case, our metadata value approver, which is a person field, and we're able to take the contents of that field and apply that role, that permission, that workflow action to that at the document level. So this allows us to create per document roles. So again, highly configurable to be able to bring in users, groups, and field level individuals to create very, very dynamic roles and rule sets within your environment. Workflows. This is where we're doing the heavy lifting when it comes to maintaining this content. Here we're able to configure the verbiage of our actions. So it's extremely important from an adoption perspective to make sure that these actions are relevant to the individual. We need to be able to speak their language, both figuratively and literally. In this case, we're able to create as many actions as we want. We're able to dictate whether or not they have a mandatory comment. We can add more if we need to. We can edit as needed. We get to carry all of these over into the workflow itself. So in configuring this environment to achieve that business process that we walked through, we work through a series of states. The draft state, under approval, published with an update requested, and then we're transitioning to a new draft. So we're doing a checkout. We're doing a checkout transition, X+1, to an update in progress, and then going through an approval. If approved, we're checking back into published. So this way, we're able to do a lot of the heavy lifting of the checkout, check-in through workflow actions. We're eliminating an SOP in order to draft the SOP in essence. So again, we're tailoring it to the business process. We're able to leverage user-based actions. We're able to leverage document properties. We're able to leverage dates escalation thresholds. So in this specific case, if we go back to state 1, that is our draft state. That is our initial state. We are keeping it in this state until a contributor or a document creator has pushed this for approval. Once we go to approval, we're waiting for that approver to take the next action. They're either rejecting it or they're approving it. We're able to configure the notifications at each of these states. So in this case, who needs to get this email? We're only notifying the validators in this specific scenario, which means they're going to get this email, the action email. We're able to customize this to look and feel however we want. You'll notice that we're using hotkeys here. That means we're able to take dynamic document level information and put it into the email. It means that we just have to configure one email and it's going to be dynamically driven out to the individuals based on that specific document without having to create a lot of different templates. We can adjust the sender. Some people like to include the boss's name because it gets people's attention. But in this case, that's what we've done here. We also have the ability to manage the permissions. So we get to manage permissions in a couple different ways. We get to do it at the document level. So as we talked about earlier in the security area, we're managing the document at the workflow state level, which means our document creator has read comment and our approvers can read write. No one else has any visibility. We can also control the field permissions. So in this case, our approvers are able to go in and still make changes to our metadata. We're not able to impact anything that was tagged at the class level as mandatory, read-only, or hidden, but we will give some flexibility here. So this means we're able to dynamically adjust the content permissions as well as the field level permissions, the metadata level permissions. In the published state, we're able to have different actions available to different users. That means that we don't have to have multiple states to facilitate different action types for different users. In this case, if you remember back to the demonstration, any user was able to make an update, but our approvers were the ones that could determine whether or not we were archiving or initiating the update process.